Hey, come in, get comfortable. Tonight, you and I are going to Neptune, the farthest planet there is, the better part of 4.5 billion kilometers from your pillow. We'll take it slowly. That's the whole idea. If you enjoy these nights, the like button and the subscribe button are down there somewhere in the dark, and you're welcome to press them, but only if this turns out to be genuinely good to you. No obligation either way. And if you feel like it, leave a comment saying where in the world you're drifting off tonight and what the sky is doing outside your window. It's oddly comforting seeing who else is falling asleep under the same stars. Now, dim the lights if you haven't already. Get heavy. Let the mattress do its work. If you fall asleep somewhere around Jupiter or Saturn or halfway through a sentence about ice, good. That isn't you failing to finish the video. That's the video doing its job. I'll keep going either way, and all of it will still be here tomorrow night. Here's the shape of the evening. We'll rise off Earth slowly, look back once, and then fall outward, world by world, past the Moon and Mars and the giants, all the way out to the blue at the far end of the Sun's neighborhood. So, one slow breath in and let it go. You're already moving. The room you're lying in sits on a planet. The planet is drifting. And tonight we're simply going to lean out a little further than usual. Below you, the ground lets go without any fuss at all. The first surprise is how close space is. If you could drive your car straight up, you'd be there in about an hour, somewhere around 100 kilometers over your own roof. People talk about space as if it were far away. It's nearer than the next city over. It just happens to be up. On the way through, you pass the whole of the air, all of it. Every cloud you've ever watched, every wind that ever rattled a window, every storm anyone has ever named, lives in a layer so thin that if Earth were an apple, the atmosphere would be thinner than the apple's skin. From inside, the sky feels endless. From out here, it's a coat of varnish on a very large ball. You level off where the space station flies, and the planet starts showing off. At this height, you'd circle the whole world in about 90 minutes, which means the people who live up here get 16 sunrises a day. 16. They say you never quite get tired of them, and that seems believable, because each one arrives as a thin ring of colored light around the edge of the world, blue and gold and rose, switching on like something patient waking up. It's worth knowing how fast you'd really be moving up here, because the number wears slippers. Orbit means falling around the world at about 28,000 kilometers an hour, 8 kilometers every second, your town to the next town inside a single yawn. You'd feel none of it. With no scenery close enough to rush past, the speed reads as stillness, and astronauts describe the whole business as the calmest commute of their lives. The fastest humans have ever routinely traveled, and it feels like lying in bed. There's a lesson in that somewhere, and I'm not going to chase it. Some nights, the people up here get the aurora. From your side, the northern lights are curtains overhead. From this side, they're below you, green and violet rivers sliding over the poles, and the crews float at the windows and go quiet. The planet spends its spare charged particles on light shows for an audience of about 7. Look down for a while. There are no lines on the real Earth, no borders, nothing labeled. Just continents the color of toast and oceans wearing weather. The clouds pile up over the warm sea in the afternoons. The deserts go on much longer than seems reasonable, and at night, the dark side of the planet glitters with cities, little embers scattered along coastlines and rivers, as if someone had banked a fire very carefully and gone to bed. The line between day and night, seen from up here, isn't a line at all. It's a soft gradient hundreds of kilometers wide, a watercolor edge where afternoon fades through amber into dark, sliding westward over the world at the speed of the spin. Along it, the streetlights come on. You can watch evening arrive for millions of people at once, city by city, the whole tender bureaucracy of dusk, and nobody down there knows they're glowing. Thunderstorms from above are the best part. They flicker inside the clouds instead of over them, soft pulses of white and violet, dozens going at once across a whole ocean. No thunder reaches you. It's the world's noisiest weather, reduced to something like fireflies in cotton. You've seen this traffic yourself, incidentally, whether you knew it or not. Those slow, steady points of light that cross the evening sky without blinking, too smooth to be planes, too deliberate to be stars, are machines up here at this height, catching sunlight after your part of the world has gone to dusk. One of them, the big station itself, is bright enough to outshine everything but the moon when it passes. People all over the planet stand in gardens and driveways to watch it go over, waving at 6 strangers doing laundry in orbit. If you ever can't sleep, the schedule of passes is public. The sky runs on timetables now, and they're rather good ones. Here's a thing I like about leaving Earth. The planet does nothing special as you go. It doesn't dim, it doesn't wave, it doesn't ask where you're off to. It keeps turning at exactly the speed it has kept, for longer than there have been eyes to check. Very professional, your planet. In December of 1968, 3 men rode out this way, farther than anyone had gone, to fly around the moon. They'd been sent to photograph landing sites, gray plains, craters, the serious business of maps. Then their little ship came around the moon's far side, and Earth rose over the gray horizon, like a small blue lamp someone had left on, and the crew of Apollo 8 rather famously dropped the flight plan and scrambled for a camera. The photograph they brought home is called Earthrise. They went all that way for the moon, and the picture everyone remembers is the one of home. Astronauts keep reporting the same quiet thing, decade after decade. From out here, they say, the planet looks small enough to take care of, and too whole to argue over. They come home a little softer than they left. You can have a mild version of that feeling for free, tonight, from under a blanket, which is frankly the better deal. You even get to keep your own pillow. Keep drifting outward, and Earth does what everything does when you leave it behind. It shrinks without complaining. First, it's a beach ball, then a marble, then a bright bead you could lose in the carpet. The moon shrinks with it, and the two of them hang there together, a big blue bead and a small gray one, keeping each other company the way they have for about as long as either can remember. Now let me tell you how far this shrinking can go, because somebody checked. It goes further than you'd think. On Valentine's Day of 1990, an aging space probe called Voyager 1 was about 6 billion kilometers out its work long finished, coasting toward the space between the stars. Before its cameras were switched off for good, the people who loved it asked it to turn around and take one last set of pictures, a family portrait of the solar system it was leaving. In one frame, caught inside a stray ray of scattered sunlight, there's a pale dot. It is not quite a whole pixel, a tenth of one, roughly. That's Earth. That dot is the complete collection. Every person you've ever met, every person anyone has ever met, every bedtime story ever told, and every bed it was told in, all of it sits comfortably inside a tenth of a pixel, photographed by a machine built by some of the people who lived there. The picture is called the pale blue dot, and you can find it tonight if you like. Though there's no need. You already know the place. You're lying in it. Some people find that photograph lonely. I've never managed to. A dot that small, and still the warmest known object in the entire frame. Every blanket in the universe, as far as anyone has confirmed, is down there on that speck. Let that sit lightly, the way you'd rest a hand on something you don't want to wake. Behind you now, Earth is a bead, then a glint, then a very steady little star with an ocean's particular shade of blue in it. It carries on turning as you go. 16 more sunrises today for the people up on the station. One more sunset for whoever's out on your street. The planet has been doing this, calmly and without supervision, since long before anything had eyes. It does not need watching tonight. That's rather the point of it. The world minds itself. The lights flicker kindly along the coastlines, and you're free to fall a little further out into the dark, where the moon is waiting to be passed. The moon is 3 days away, at the speed people have actually traveled it. Light does the same trip in a second and a half, but light never stops to look at anything, and we're in no hurry tonight. 3 days is a nice, humane length for a crossing. It's a long weekend. The Apollo crews spent it checking instruments, shaving badly in zero gravity, and watching the moon grow from a coin to a wall. You can spend it in one slow breath, because that's the kind of ship we're flying. Here's a distance worth feeling once. The gap between Earth and the moon is so wide that, on an average day, every other planet in the solar system could be lined up inside it. Jupiter, Saturn, all of them, with a bit of shoving. We think of the moon as the near neighbor, and it is. It's also far enough away to hold everything else we'll visit tonight, laid end to end. As you coast across, the moon comes up slowly ahead, gray and patient, and lit exactly the way it looks from your window, only more so. The craters sharpen. The old lava plains spread out. Those dark patches you've seen your whole life without maybe knowing they had names. Astronomers long ago mistook them for water and named them like poetry. The Sea of Tranquility, the Ocean of Storms, the Bay of Rainbows, the Lake of Dreams. There's no water in any of them, and no one has ever had the heart to rename them. Where did all this gray country come from in the first place? The leading story, and it has held up well under decades of poking, is that when Earth was newborn, something the size of Mars struck it a glancing blow, and the splash of molten debris settled into orbit and gathered itself into the moon, which means the moon isn't Earth's neighbor so much as Earth's fragment. The rock up there is partly the same rock as your garden, thrown clear in the world's first bad week and keeping a respectful distance ever since. The visitors who walked on it reported one detail nobody expected. Moon dust, tracked into the lander on their suits, has a smell. Burnt gunpowder, they said, or struck matches. A sharp firework scent hanging in the cabin after each moonwalk. Nobody fully knows why. The moon has no air and nothing burning, and yet it smells like the end of a celebration. The ground itself even moves now and then, in its own fashion. Seismometers the crews left behind kept listening for years, and caught moonquakes, slow, deep, gentle ones, the whole little world faintly ringing after each, the way a struck bell hums. Nothing dramatic, just an old place settling in its sleep, like a house at night, like the one you're in. The moon keeps the same face turned toward Earth always, the way a portrait keeps its eyes on a room. Its far side, which does get just as much sunlight as the near side, whatever the old phrase says, is rougher, paler, more heavily bruised. It isn't dark, it's just shy. 12 people have walked down there. The dust they kicked up settled fast, because there's no air to hold it, and then everything went back to being still. That stillness is the moon's great talent. With no wind and no rain, nothing tidies anything away. The footprints from 1969 are, as far as anyone can tell, still there tonight, crisp as the hour they were made, and they should stay legible for something like 1,000,000 years. Long after the names of every country on Earth have changed, the moon will still be keeping a few dozen boot prints on file, unlabeled, unexplained, perfectly preserved. The visitors also left mirrors, small fold-out panels of them, tilted back toward home. Observatories on Earth still fire laser pulses at those mirrors and time the reflection, which is how we know the moon's distance down to finer than the width of your thumbnail. It's also how we know the moon is leaving. Gently, mind you, about 4 centimeters a year, close to the speed your fingernails grow. The moon has been easing away like this for ages, a guest slowly backing toward the door, while insisting it's had a lovely time. In some far era, the eclipses will stop fitting properly, because the moon will sit a little too far away to cover the sun exactly. Tonight, though, the fit is still perfect, the mirrors still answer, and the tides still come in on schedule. All the while, the moon is working. Its gravity reaches across the gap and gathers Earth's oceans into 2 broad, gentle swellings, one facing it, one opposite, and as the planet turns through them, your coastlines get their tides. Twice a day, more or less, every harbor on Earth rises and falls because of that gray country overhead. The sea follows the moon around like a dog on a long lead, and it has never once been late. Sailors planned by it before anyone knew why it worked. Tonight, while you sleep, a few billion tons of ocean will lean quietly toward the moon and settle back, twice, without waking anyone. There's one more piece of lunar luck worth savoring, and it's pure coincidence. The sun is about 400 times wider than the moon, and it happens to sit about 400 times farther away. So from where you lie, the two of them look almost exactly the same size in the sky. That's the whole machinery of a total solar eclipse. No law of nature requires it. No other planet we know of gets the trick this exact. It's a fluke of geometry, a coin standing on its edge, and it means that a few times a decade, somewhere on Earth, the moon fits over the sun like a lid made to order, and day goes velvet for a few minutes, and grown adults weep in fields. In some far age, with the moon a little farther out, the fit will loosen. You happen to be alive in the era when it's perfect. Nice timing. If you were standing down there now, you'd weigh a sixth of what you weigh in bed. Your blanket would weigh almost nothing, which is the single best argument anyone has made for living there. The catch is the silence. Days of glare, nights 2 weeks long, and no air to carry so much as a whisper. Beautiful, yes. A place for a visit, not a residence. Here's a small souvenir to take from this crossing, something you can check from your own window. Some evenings, when the moon is a thin crescent, you can faintly see the rest of its circle glowing anyway, the dark part softly filled in, like a held breath. That glow is Earthshine, sunlight bouncing off Earth's clouds and seas, crossing to the moon and coming back to your eye. It's your own planet's light, making the round trip. Leonardo da Vinci worked out the explanation 5 centuries ago in a notebook, and it has been quietly correct ever since. The old moon in the new moon's arms, sailors called it. Next time you see it, you'll know you're looking at Earth's reflection. Glance back once before we move along. Earth hangs above the lunar plains, blue and marbled, and 4 times wider than the moon ever looks from your garden. Moonlight, the stuff lying across your bedroom floor some nights, is just this gray country doing its quiet work, borrowing sunlight and lending it on to you at no charge. We slide past without landing. The craters roll by underneath. The mirrors keep their aim, and the footprints rest in the dust exactly where their owners left them, which is enough for one small world to be getting on with. Past the moon, the road empties out, and you meet the true scale of the solar system, which is room. Just room. The space between worlds is the main thing the solar system is made of, and tonight it's all yours. A crossing to Mars, the way we build ships at the moment, takes about the length of a school year. Half a year to 9 months of steady coasting, depending on how the planets happen to be arranged. Crews who make that trip someday will celebrate birthdays in the corridor between worlds. You'll make it in the time it takes to get sleepy, which I'd call the superior travel plan. Mars announces itself by color. Even from far off, it's a warm ember orange against all that black, and the color is nothing exotic. It's rust. The soil is rich in iron. The iron met oxygen long ago, and the whole planet quietly oxidized, the way a garden gate does when nobody paints it for 4 billion years. Mars is a world the color of an old key. It's a small place, about half Earth's width, with ambitions far above its size. The tallest volcano anyone has found on any planet stands there. Olympus Mons, more than 20 kilometers high, its base wide enough to blanket Arizona. Here's my favorite thing about it. Standing on its slopes, you couldn't see the mountain at all. The grade is so gentle, and the base so huge, that the summit hides beyond the horizon. the biggest mountain in the solar system, and it's too big to notice from its own front steps. There's a canyon to match, a gash called the Mariner Valley that would stretch from one coast of the United States to the other. Our Grand Canyon would fit into one of its side channels, politely, like an umbrella into a stand. Daylight on Mars is butterscotch. Fine dust hangs in the thin air and turns the sky a soft caramel color. And then at dusk, the whole arrangement flips. The dust scatters the warm colors away and lets the cool ones through. So sunsets on Mars are blue. On the world of rust, evening comes down in blue. The robots there have photographed it many times, and the pictures always look upside down to me in the loveliest way, an amber day ending in a cool blue hush. A Martian day, by the way, runs 24 hours and 39 minutes, so close to yours that the people who drive the rovers from Earth have been known to wear special Mars watches and to drift out of step with their own families for months at a time, living on the clock of a planet they'll never visit. Of all the times the solar system could have dealt another world, it dealt 139 minutes from home. Mars also leans on its axis, almost exactly as Earth does, so it runs proper seasons and polar caps of ice that grow all winter and shrink all summer, breathing in and breathing out once a year. The wind there writes, dust devils, slender tornadoes of pink dust, wander across the plains and hoover up the bright surface powder as they go, leaving dark scribbled trails behind, loops and curls and long lazy signatures. Orbiting cameras photograph the results, whole hillsides doodled on overnight. Nobody plans the drawings. The weather just has a hand. People even fly there now. A little helicopter named Ingenuity, the size of a picnic basket, hitched a ride with one of the rovers and was expected to manage 5 short hops as an experiment. It flew 72 times. First aircraft in history to fly on another world, buzzing over the rust in air 100 times thinner than yours. And it kept at it for 3 years before a hard landing finally retired it. It rests out there on the sand now, honorably, wings still. 2 little moons hurry overhead, and I do mean little. Phobos, say it F-O-H Bose, and Deimos, say it D-Y Mose. The names mean fear and dread, which is tremendously unfair, because they're lumpy gray potatoes the size of small cities. F-O-H Bose flies so low and so fast that it crosses the sky twice a day, rising in the west and setting in the east, backwards to everything you know. If you lived there, you'd learn to read the clock by it. The 2 potatoes have different retirements ahead, and both are far enough off to be nobody's worry. F-O-H Bose circles so low that Mars's gravity is slowly reeling it in, a few centimeters a year, and in some tens of millions of years, it will come apart and spread itself into a thin ring, giving the red planet a modest halo for a while. Deimos, farther out, is drifting the other way, easing off into independence at its own unhurried pace. 1 moon leaning in, 1 leaning out, both on schedules so long that every mountain range on Earth will have changed shape first. The solar system plans in timescales that make patience look hasty. People have been sending machines to Mars for 2 generations now, and the machines have a habit of overstaying beautifully. One rover was promised 90 days of life by its engineers. It kept working for the better part of 15 years, trundling along on stubborn wheels, while its makers kept extending the paperwork. Another one, more recently, switched on a microphone, and for the first time human beings heard wind on another planet. A soft, papery gust recorded 40 minutes of light away from the nearest ear. It sounds like wind at home. That's the whole miracle of it. Mars slides behind us now, small and amber and patient, its blue evening arriving right on time. The giants are still far ahead of us in the dark, and before them comes a stretch of country with a worse reputation than it deserves. The road, I promise, stays quiet the entire way. Somewhere past Mars begins the asteroid belt, and I'd like to formally apologize to it on behalf of the movies. In films, the belt is a gauntlet, all tumbling boulders and near misses and pilots gritting their teeth. The real belt would make terrible cinema. Out here, the average distance between one decent-sized rock and the next is about 1,000,000 kilometers. Stand on an asteroid, live out your whole life there, and odds are you'd never once see another asteroid with your own eyes. It's not a minefield. It's a very thin scattering of pebbles across a room the size of a county. Every spacecraft we've ever sent through has sailed across without so much as a polite swerve. Mission planners don't lose sleep over the belt. Nobody grits anything. There's less out here than the name suggests, too. Sweep up every asteroid in the entire belt, roll them into one ball, and you'd have something only a few percent as hefty as our moon. All those millions of rocks together wouldn't make one respectable world. They're crumbs from the solar system's construction, as old as the sun and its whole family, still lying where they fell because the biggest planet next door kept stirring the mixture whenever it started to clump. That's the best explanation anyone has. And it means the belt isn't a broken planet. It's a planet that never got permission to happen. The largest crumb has a name and a story. Ceres, a round little world nearly 1,000 kilometers across, holding roughly a third of the belt's entire mass all by itself. It was spotted on the very first night of January 1801, the first discovery of the new century, by an astronomer who was building a star catalog and noticed one of his stars refusing to sit still. Ceres turns out to be a gentle sort of place. There's water ice down in its shadowed craters, and a few bright salt flats that shine out of the darkness where ancient brine once seeped up and dried. A small spacecraft called Dawn spent years circling it recently, mapping every wrinkle, and found a dim, frost-dusted world going about its business with no atmosphere and no fuss. The second biggest rock out here, Vesta, once took a blow that nearly cracked it, and the crater from that ancient collision covers most of its southern half. Here's the part I love. Pieces of Vesta knocked loose that day have been falling onto Earth ever since, as meteorites and museums keep them in glass cases. You can stand in a city on a rainy afternoon and look at a piece of the asteroid belt that delivered itself. No mission required. The belt occasionally mails out samples, postage paid, a few million years in transit. The naming out here has gone delightfully off the rails too. The first asteroids got goddesses, and then the discoveries kept coming, and the committee that approves names started saying yes to nearly everything. There are asteroids named for composers and cities and entire rock bands. There's one named for David Bowie. There's one named Mr. Spock. And it gets better, because it isn't named for the character. It's named for the discoverer's cat, who was named for the character. Somewhere over your head tonight, a mountain-sized rock is circling the sun on a stately orbit, carrying a cat's name into deep time. One of the strangest rocks out here is unusually rich in metal, mixed through with stone, and one possibility is that it preserves material from the interior of a small world disrupted long ago. A probe named for the soul, Psyche, is on its way there now, due in a few years, to investigate what this unusual body is actually made of. New ones are still being found, by the thousands, every single year. Robotic survey telescopes photograph the whole sky night after night, and software sifts the images for any dot that moved between frames. Somewhere on a mountaintop right now, a camera is taking the next picture, and a program with no sense of occasion is checking 30,000 dots, and once in a while it raises its hand. Each new rock gets a number, an orbit calculated out for centuries, and a line in a ledger kept since 1801. It's one of the quietest ongoing projects our species runs, a full inventory of the neighborhood's gravel, conducted while the neighborhood sleeps. For a while, long ago, Ceres was called a planet in every textbook. Then it was reclassified as an asteroid. And then, at the same committee meeting in 2006 that demoted Pluto, it was promoted again to dwarf planet. Same meeting, opposite directions. I have agreed, for my own peace, to be calm about what that meeting did to Pluto, and I mostly am. We'll pass Pluto's neighborhood much later tonight, and I intend to be nothing but pleasant about it. If people ever do come out here to mine these rocks, they're in for the dullest commute in history. Days of empty black between destinations, the sun shrunk to a bright coin, and the radio for company, beautiful in its way. But the belt's main export, tonight and always, is elbow room. So we leave the crumbs to their spacing. Each rock keeps its million-kilometer distance from the next, like guests at a shy party, and none of them will bump anything tonight, or likely this millennium. The light changes before the planet does. Ahead, one star has been growing steadily brighter for a while now, outglowing everything else in the dark, and it isn't a star at all. You've seen it from your own window 100 times without ceremony. That too bright, too steady point, the color of old cream. Here's where it lives: Jupiter. Jupiter is the solar system's other center of gravity, the deputy sun. Take every planet we'll meet tonight, all of them together, and Jupiter outweighs the lot more than twice over. You could pour 1,300 Earths into it and still have room to slosh. When it drifts up ahead of you like this, banded and enormous, the honest reaction isn't fear. It's the feeling you get standing under a cathedral ceiling, that pleasant smallness, the architecture doing you a favor by not caring about you. People sometimes call it a failed star, and Jupiter deserves better gossip. To ignite like the Sun, it would need about 80 times more mass than it has. That's not a near miss. That's a house cat failing to be an elephant. Jupiter is no failed star. It's the most successful planet in the neighborhood, and it knows it. The face of the place is all weather. Cream and caramel and rust-colored bands slide past each other at different speeds. Whole jet streams wider than Earth flowing in opposite directions, curling into eddies where they rub, and set into all that, like a pin in a lapel, is the storm. The Great Red Spot, a single hurricane wider than our entire planet, spinning calmly along, its clouds towering above the decks around it. People have watched that one storm continuously since the 1830s. It was old when your great-great-grandmother was young. It has been shrinking slowly over the last century, the watchers tell us. But nobody alive has ever known a Jupiter without it, and neither will you. For all its bulk, Jupiter is also the fastest spinner in the family. One full day there lasts about 10 hours. The biggest planet, with the shortest day, which strikes me as pure showing off, and the spin is what smears its weather into those long, elegant stripes. Don't go looking for the ground, by the way. There isn't any. Sink through the cloud decks and things simply get thicker and hotter and stranger. Air becoming syrup, becoming something the models say behaves like liquid metal. Hydrogen squeezed until it gleams and conducts. An ocean with no shore and no surface, all the way down toward a core nobody has ever seen. As far as anyone can measure from outside, Jupiter is weather wrapped around pressure, wrapped around a guess. That metal ocean powers a magnetic field of ridiculous size. If your eyes could see it, Jupiter's magnetic bubble would be one of the biggest things in your night sky, far wider than the full moon. The planet crackles with radio noise too. People on Earth with modest backyard antennas genuinely tune in and listen to Jupiter, hissing and popping like a distant campfire. 30 to 50 light minutes of static delivered free. People have even been inside, briefly, by proxy. In 1995, a small probe was parachuted into those clouds on purpose. A thermometer dropped into the doorman's coat pocket. It fell through peach-colored haze, radioed back pressure, and wind and chemistry, and lasted nearly an hour before the deep got it, which was longer than promised. Everything we touch out here seems to overperform. It's a good habit for machines to have. The clouds it fell through crackle, by the way, with lightning. Bolts flicker in Jupiter's night-side storms, carrying far more punch than anything Earth's thunderheads manage, lighting the cloud decks from inside like lamps behind curtains. There's even a ring, a faint, dusty whisper of one. Nothing like the spectacle 2 doors out, but present, because apparently no giant out here goes entirely unadorned. A ship named Juno has been swinging low over those clouds in recent years, diving close on each long loop, and its team did something I've always admired. They bolted on a camera mostly for the public, posted every raw image online, and invited anyone on Earth to process them. So the gallery of Jupiter's clouds, the swirls like cream in coffee, the storms like rose windows, has been developed by retirees and students and insomniacs on their kitchen laptops. Some of the finest portraits of the largest planet were finished, long after midnight by people in slippers. I find that a very good use of a solar system. Jupiter's own year, if you're curious, runs about 12 of yours. It's why the old astrologers gave it such a stately role. One house of the zodiac per year, the slow hand on the sky's clock. You've lived through its whole circuit 2 or 3 times without being asked to notice. It will complete its next lap whether the paperwork gets filed or not. Jupiter earned its keep with us in another way. When our little ships head for the outer worlds, they swing close past this giant on purpose and let its gravity fling them onward, faster and outward, like a child swung round by the arms. The probe that visited Neptune did exactly that, right here in 1979. Jupiter holds the door to the deep solar system, and it has held that door for every traveler we've ever sent through it. It does one more quiet job. Once in a while, it catches things. In 1994, a broken comet fell into Jupiter piece by piece, and the bruises it left in those clouds were each larger than Earth. The giant absorbed the whole affair and smoothed its weather back over in months, the way a lake forgets a stone. Out here, Jupiter takes the occasional hit itself. Whether it also shields the small, warm worlds behind it, or now and then speeds something their way, is a question the simulators are still working on, and none of it your concern tonight. Moons swarm the place, past 100 at the latest count. Most of them captured gravel with license plate names. 4 of them, though, are proper worlds, and they're circling in plain view right now, bright and orderly, like lanterns hung along a drive. We'll walk that drive in a moment. For now, we let the giant turn, 10 hours to a day, storm pinned to its lapel, holding the door open onto the dark where the ringed worlds live. We slip through with a little borrowed speed, and Jupiter goes back to its magnificent, unhurried churning, which it would have done anyway, whether or not anyone came by to admire it. Those 4 lanterns deserve their moment, because a man found them with a telescope not much stronger than bird-watching glasses, and they quietly rearranged the universe. In January of 1610, Galileo pointed his new tube at Jupiter and noticed 3 little stars in a neat row beside it, then 4. Night after night they shifted, always staying with the planet, always in a line, and he realized he was watching worlds circle another world. What that did was quietly rearrange the old picture. Until that week, respectable opinion held that everything in the sky circled Earth. Here were 4 somethings that plainly circled something else. The moons of Jupiter were the first crack in the old ceiling, and they were found from a courtyard in Padua by a man busy improving his own lenses. Closest in is Io. Say it EYO. And Io is the solar system's boiler room. Jupiter's gravity and the tugging of the other moons knead it like bread dough, and all that flexing keeps its insides molten. So the whole moon runs a permanent volcano festival. Hundreds of vents, plumes that arc high enough to be seen from passing spacecraft, a surface repainting itself in sulfur yellows and oranges and reds. It is, and I say this with real affection, the least restful place we'll mention tonight, which is why we're mentioning it from a distance and moving on. Io's fires were discovered, I should say, by a person being careful. days after the first Voyager swept past, a navigation engineer named Linda Morabito was examining a routine image, checking star positions behind the moon, when she noticed a faint umbrella-shaped smudge off Io's edge. She could have logged it as a flaw and gone to lunch. She didn't. The smudge turned out to be a volcanic plume, the height of 30 Everests, caught mid-eruption, the first active volcano ever seen anywhere beyond Earth. It remains one of the great discoveries made by someone double-checking, and it belongs to everyone who has ever squinted at a detail and thought, hold on, next door is Europa. And Europa is the opposite of Io in every way that matters. A shell of water ice, smooth as a billiard ball, by planetary standards, crisscrossed with tan cracks, like a frozen pond that's been skated on all winter. Beneath that shell, the measurements agree, lies an ocean of liquid salt water, kept warm by the same patient kneading. And here's a number that makes the scale gentler to feel. That dark, sealed ocean likely holds around twice as much water as every sea on Earth combined. One of the largest bodies of water anyone can point to anywhere. And it has been lying in the dark, under the ice, for eons, calm past all imagining. A spacecraft named for it is on its way right now to fly close and listen. Whatever it finds, the ocean will still be the quietest thing we know of. And it's deep. Beneath 15 to 30 kilometers of ice, the water may go down 100 kilometers or more, 10 times the deepest trench in any sea on Earth. If you could stand on Europa's ice in the pale sunlight, with Jupiter filling a quarter of the sky, there would be more water under your boots than under any sailor who ever lived. Third out comes Ganymede, the biggest moon in the solar system, bigger than the planet Mercury, a world of two-toned ice, with the distinction of being the only moon anywhere that generates its own magnetic field, a little compass heart of its own. It likely hides an ocean too, deeper down. Another ship is en route there as well. The lanterns are getting visitors. And last, dark, dignified Callisto, the far one, wearing more craters than any world we know. Nothing has resurfaced it in eons. Every scar it ever took, it kept, which makes it the family album out here. 4 billion years of weather reports written in circles. Callisto has seen everything and repaved nothing, and there's a kind of peace in that policy. It also happens to orbit far enough out to sit clear of the worst of Jupiter's radiation, which is why, whenever people sketch plans for a crude outpost in this neighborhood someday, quiet old Callisto keeps making the short list. The moon that changed least may end up with the spare beds. The lanterns also gave humanity a gift nobody saw coming. Their orbits are clockwork, and by the 1670s astronomers could predict, to the minute, when EYEO should slip into Jupiter's shadow. Except the timings drifted. When Earth was on the far side of its orbit from Jupiter, the little eclipses ran late, and when Earth swung near, they ran early. A Danish astronomer named Romer realized the eclipses weren't wrong. The news was slow. Light itself needed time to cross the extra distance, and from that lag, he produced the first real measurement of the speed of light. People had argued for centuries about whether light moved instantly. 4 small moons, keeping perfect time around a giant planet, settled it. The speed limit of the universe was first clocked using Jupiter's lanterns as the stopwatch. 4 lanterns then, a boiler room, a sealed sea, a compass heart, and an archive, all found in 1 week by one man with a birdwatcher's glass. They're still exactly where he left them. Galileo's actual notebook pages survive. By the way, little rows of dots and dashes beside a hand-drawn Jupiter, the first homework ever done on another planet's family. 4 centuries later, the same 4 moons still cross Jupiter's face on schedule, towing their small round shadows over the clouds, like coins sliding across a table. You can find them yourself with binoculars from your yard, little beads in a line, and now you know their names. It's a long, easy coast, from Jupiter out to the next porch light, nearly doubling your distance from the sun, and the destination has been visible the whole way. Saturn doesn't sneak up on anybody. It arrives the way good news does, slowly and then all at once. Even a small telescope on a cold night back home will show you the rings, a tiny golden ellipse hanging in the eyepiece. And people tend to remember the first time they saw it for the rest of their lives. Up close, the rings resolve into what they really are, which is not a solid hoop at all. They're a snowstorm that never lands. Billions upon billions of pieces of nearly pure water ice. Some like dust, some like hailstones, some the size of houses, every single one on its own private orbit, all of them together forming sheets so smooth they look poured. The proportions are the sleepy part. Edge to edge, the main rings would span more than 20 Earths laid side by side. Top to bottom, in most places, they're about as thick as a 3-story house. Scale that down, and it's a sheet of paper as wide as a village. It may be the flattest large structure anywhere in the sun's whole estate, and it hangs there in perfect silence, turning. Nobody's entirely settled on where the rings came from, or how long they'll stay. A shredded moon is one candidate. A comet that wandered too close is another. And the spacecraft that studied them found their finest ice slowly sifting down into Saturn itself, a gentle rain of ring into planet that will take ages beyond counting to finish. The rings are either very old or surprisingly young, and the argument is ongoing, and none of it needs settling before you sleep. Some questions are furniture. You can just live with them. Saturn itself is a softer, quieter Jupiter. The same cream and butterscotch weather, brushed smoother, with one eccentric flourish at the top of the world. Around the North Pole, the jet stream flows in a hexagon. 6 sides, corners and all, wide enough to hold a couple of Earths, holding its shape year after year. Nobody would have dared draw that on purpose. Even Saturn's weather, it turns out, occasionally uses a ruler. The rings hold one more ghost worth mentioning. Sometimes, dark smudges appear across them, spoke-shaped shadows that rotate with the rings for hours and then dissolve. Fine dust, lifted briefly off the ring plane by static charge, the way a wool blanket crackles in a dry winter room. They come and go with the planet's seasons. and for years after they were first photographed, nobody would quite commit to believing in them. Even the scenery out here has moods. The ice of the rings, up close, isn't sitting still either. The particles drift and jostle at walking pace, clumping into temporary drifts and coming apart again. A snowbank forever reorganizing itself in silence. Collisions out there happen at the speed of 2 shopping carts touching. It may be the gentlest traffic in the solar system. The planet is also, famously, less dense than water. Given a sufficiently enormous bathtub, Saturn would float, and I pass that fact along exactly as it was passed to me, with no bathtub to offer and no plans to acquire one. Circling all this is a little moon worth loving, Enceladus. Say it, Enceladus. A snowball barely as wide as a quiet European country, and the brightest world in the solar system, because it can't stop repainting itself. The vents run along 4 great fissures near the South Pole, warm blue cracks in the white that the mapping teams call the tiger stripes. Through them, the moon exhales, cracks near its South Pole vent plumes of salty water from a buried ocean. The spray freezes instantly, and some of it falls straight back down as the freshest snow anywhere. A moon that snows on itself from the inside out. Some of the spray escapes and feeds one of Saturn's outer rings. So Enceladus is out there, quietly contributing to the scenery, one snowfall at a time. The moon count at Saturn, incidentally, has crossed 270 and keeps climbing every time somebody stares harder, most of them captured pebbles. A few of the proper ones are worth a nod as we pass. There's Mimas, say it M-Y-Maze, a small icy moon with one enormous crater covering a third of its face, which gives it an uncanny resemblance to a certain battle station from the movies, a resemblance astronomers noticed immediately and have never once been mature about. And there's Iapetus, say it I-Apetus, painted 2 colors, one hemisphere dark as coal and the other bright as snow, because it sweeps up dark dust with its leading face, the way a car windshield collects the weather. It also wears a mountain ridge running clean around its equator, like the seam on a walnut. And nobody has fully explained that one either. The outer solar system keeps a drawer of small mysteries and refuses to be embarrassed about it. One machine knew all of this the way you know your own street. Cassini, a school bus-sized spacecraft, circled Saturn for 13 years, threading the moons, tasting the Enceladus spray, watching 2 full seasons turn. In September of 2017, running out of fuel, it was steered deliberately into Saturn's clouds and burned there like a falling star, so that it could never one day drift into that buried ocean and contaminate whatever might sleep inside. The people who flew it wept, and then they went to dinner together, which is the right order of operations. It was a good ship, and it ended as a streak of light over the world it loved. That's a fine ending, and it's had it, and it rests. So we let Saturn shrink behind us, hexagon turning, bathtub still pending. The rings go on with their bright, silent circling back there, entirely unbothered about whether anyone is watching, though tonight, for a minute, somebody was. Before we leave Saturn's household, there's one member you have to meet properly, because it's the only moon in the solar system where you could stand outside without a pressure suit and put up an umbrella, and both halves of that sentence are true. Titan is Saturn's giant, second largest moon anywhere, and from outside it looks like a peach left in the fog. A deep orange haze wraps the whole world, so thick that for centuries nobody had the faintest idea what lay underneath. That haze is a genuine atmosphere, mostly nitrogen like yours. And here's the surprise: it's denser than Earth's air, half again the pressure of what you're breathing now. Every other moon we've passed tonight is airless or close to it. Titan has weather in the full domestic sense. Clouds gather, rain falls, rivers run down to seas, and the seas have shorelines, and wind raises small waves on them. The catch, and it's a lovely one, is the plumbing. Titan runs at about -180 degrees Celsius, far too cold for liquid water, so the entire water cycle has been recast with a different fluid. Methane, the stuff of natural gas, is a liquid at those temperatures. And on Titan, it plays every role water plays here. Methane clouds, methane rain, methane rivers, and up in the north, methane seas. The largest, named for the Kraken, rivals the Caspian Sea back home. Meanwhile, the bedrock, the actual ground, is water ice frozen so deep and so hard it behaves like granite. Same ingredients as home, dealt in a different order. Stone made of water, rain made of gas, and the whole arrangement working smoothly, as if it had never occurred to Titan that this wasn't normal. The rain there is worth a slow thought at bedtime. The models suggest it comes rarely, years or decades of dry, followed by an enormous soaking, fat, heavy drops falling in slow motion through that thick air under low gravity, drops the size of marbles drifting down like snow. Centuries of drizzle-free waiting, then a night of long, gentle rain on a cold sea no one has ever heard. Somewhere out there, that rain is either falling or gathering itself to fall, and either way, it needs nothing from you. We've touched it once. In January of 2005, a small European probe named Huygens, say it Huygens, rode down through the orange for 2.5 hours under parachutes, photographing pale hills and dark drainage channels that could have been mistaken for anywhere rural on Earth, and then settled onto the surface with a soft thump, into ground with the give of damp sand. It was, and remains, the farthest from home anything of ours has ever landed. The pictures from the ground show a dim tangerine plain scattered with rounded cobbles, and the cobbles are rounded the way river stones are rounded, worn smooth by liquid rolling them along. It transmitted for about an hour from the surface. A polite guest who stayed exactly as long as the batteries allowed, and then Titan's fog closed over the landing site and kept it. The orange of the haze is chemistry with a pedigree. High up, sunlight works on the nitrogen and methane and cooks up drifting organic smog, heavy molecules that settle out over the ages, like soot from a lazy chimney, dusting the dunes dark. Chemists suspect the recipe up there isn't far from the one that hung over the young Earth, back before anything swam. which would make Titan, in its way, a museum of our own planet's toddler years, kept in cold storage 1 billion kilometers up the road, admission-free, opening hours geological. The seas themselves, when radar finally measured them, turned out to be uncannily calm. Soundings found some of them mirror flat, their waves, if any, mere millimeters tall. Seas the size of inland empires, lying as still as tea in a cup nobody's touched. The stillest open water anyone has ever measured is not on Earth. It's up there, in the orange. Around Titan's waist runs a belt of dunes, ranked and regular, sculpted by the slow winds out of grains that aren't sand at all, but that same fallen organic soot, dark as coffee grounds. Dune country there stretches wider than the Sahara, combed into lines you could see from orbit, redrawn at a pace no camera will ever catch in the act. And here's the tender part. Saturn owns the sky above all this. Enormous, ringed, close enough to fill 12 of your full moons, and Titan has never once seen it. The haze is too thick. The most spectacular view in the solar system hangs over a world that keeps its curtains drawn, and in my line of work, I have to respect that. One more Titan fact, my favorite in the whole outer solar system. The air is thick and the gravity is weak, and the combination sits at just the right ratio that a person there, with wings strapped to their arms, could genuinely fly, flap and soar, like the oldest dream there is. The physics checks out, and planetary scientists mention it with the straightest faces they can manage. Nobody has done it yet, of course. The commute is the hard part, but it's waiting there. The one place we know of where the dream works, an orange world with rain like falling marbles and skies a person could swim in. There are plans, real funded ones, to go back with a flying machine, a drone the size of a small car meant to hop from dune to dune sometime in the years ahead. Titan will still be there, running its slow reign, holding our little lander in the fog like a keepsake. So we let the orange world turn away, seas to the north, one quiet visitor asleep on the plain, rain gathering somewhere over the hills at the pace of decades. Every world tonight has offered its own version of calm. Titan's version has shorelines. The next world out is smaller, stranger, and lying down on the job. You'll see what I mean. Uranus is the solar system's great sideways fact. Every other planet spins more or less upright as it circles the sun, tilted a touch, the way Earth is, which is where your seasons come from. Uranus is tilted just past 90 degrees. It rolls around its orbit like a barrel, poles where its waist should be, and the leading suspicion is that something enormous clipped it. Long ago, back when the solar system was young and crowded and full of bad drivers. Whatever happened, the planet never straightened up, and by now, the arrangement suits it. Living sideways does odd things to a calendar. A year on Uranus lasts 84 Earth years, so each pole takes turns pointing sunward, and each gets about 42 years of continuous daylight, followed by 42 years of continuous night. A polar night longer than most mortgages. Whole careers begin and end there in the dark. Your night, I'll just note, lasts until morning, and the sun comes back without being asked. It's worth being fond of an arrangement like that. Here's the odd part, and it's genuinely odd. Although Neptune orbits half again farther from the Sun, the air of Uranus is the coldest anyone has measured at any planet, down near -224 degrees Celsius. Most planets leak a little warmth from inside, left over from their construction. Uranus barely does, as if its furnace went out somewhere along the way, and nobody knows quite why. It's one of the solar system's standing mysteries, filed and unhurried, and it will keep exactly as well as everything else out here keeps. The place was found from a back garden. In March of 1781, a musician turned telescope maker named William Herschel was surveying stars from his yard in the English city of Bath when one of them showed a disk. No one in recorded history had ever discovered a planet. Every other world had simply always been known, walked into the story before the story began. Herschel doubled the width of the solar system from a garden, between concerts. Herschel rarely worked alone, it's worth saying. His sister Caroline ran the observing logs, swept the skies on her own account, and went on to discover a string of comets herself, becoming the first woman ever paid a salary to do astronomy. The family business was the sky, conducted from a garden in the west of England, and between the two of them they left it considerably larger than they found it. He then tried to name it George, truly, Georgium Sidus, George's star, in honor of his king, and for decades some almanacs listed it that way, while the rest of the world politely declined. Astronomy eventually settled on Uranus, and we came within a whisker of living in a solar system containing a planet called George. Some nights I'm sorry we missed it. The moons of Uranus, and there are more than 24, skip the gods entirely. They're named for characters from Shakespeare and Alexander Pope, Titania and Oberon, Miranda and Ariel and Puck, a whole company of players circling a tipped-over world at the cold end of everything. The smallest of the main cast, Miranda, looks like it was assembled from spare parts, a patchwork of mismatched terrains with ice cliffs that rank among the tallest anywhere, kilometers of sheer drop. In gravity that gentle, a pebble nudged off the top would fall for several minutes, in no particular hurry, before reaching the bottom. You could time it with a kettle. Modern instruments added one more detail that I pass along in the interest of full disclosure. The clouds of Uranus carry traces of hydrogen sulfide, the rotten egg gas, a fact confirmed some years back by astronomers with excellent spectrometers and, presumably, mixed feelings. The most distinguished shade of sea foam in the sky, and it would smell faintly of breakfast gone wrong. No one will ever stand in it unprotected, so the planet's secret is safe. But I felt you should know the sideways world is also, mildly, the scented one. There are rings as well, thin and dark as pencil lines, found by accident in 1977 when astronomers watched a star blink out several times before the planet even reached it. The universe does hand out the occasional freebie. Exactly one spacecraft has ever called. Voyager 2 swept past in January of 1986, gathered nearly everything in our textbooks in a few brisk hours, and carried on. That ratio is restful in its way. 2.5 centuries of squinting from Earth, then one working afternoon up close, and that single afternoon still supplies most of what any book can tell you about the seventh planet. Uranus is due another visitor eventually, and it will keep perfectly well until one comes. Its next appointment was the whole reason for tonight, and the road between the two was 3 years of dark. You'll cross it in a breath. Behind you, the sideways world rolls on toward the far edge of its 42-year afternoon. Moons in costume, rings like pencil lines, cold beyond argument, and completely at peace with all of it. Somewhere down in that blue-green calm, it's always the middle of a very long season, and nothing there is waiting for us. It's simply carrying on. The stretch between Uranus and Neptune is the longest single crossing of our night. Years of empty road, even at a spacecraft's pace. And it's the right place for a story. This one happens entirely on Earth, at writing desks, and it ends with the world we're heading toward. Settle in a little deeper. This is the story of how Neptune was found before anyone saw it. After Herschel found his sideways planet, astronomers did what astronomers do, which is bookkeeping. They charted where Uranus ought to be each night, decade after decade, according to the mathematics of gravity that had worked flawlessly for everything else in the sky. Uranus declined to cooperate. It ran a little fast for a few decades, then a little slow, always slightly somewhere else, like a guest who keeps almost arriving. When they dug through the old catalogs, it got better. Uranus, it turned out, had been observed and written down as a star at least a dozen times before anyone recognized it, going back more than a century. The planet had been quietly photobombing star charts for generations. All those accidental sightings stretched the records back far enough to make the misbehavior undeniable. Something was tugging at Uranus, something unseen, farther out in the dark. The man who kept the official tables of Uranus, a patient Parisian named Bouvard, had already died suspecting the answer. His tables kept failing no matter how carefully he built them, and he wrote, near the end, that some undiscovered body might be the cause. He never got to see the idea vindicated. Bookkeepers deserve their monuments too, and his is that he was right. In Paris, a mathematician named Leverrier, say it, Leverrier, sat down with the problem. This was the 1840s. No computers, no calculators, nothing but paper, ink, and a mind willing to grind through months of arithmetic by hand, working backward from a wobble to the invisible thing causing it. From the errors in one planet's path, he computed the position of another planet nobody had ever knowingly seen. Then he wrote a letter to the Berlin Observatory that said, in effect, "Point your telescope here." The letter arrived on the 23rd of September, 1846. That same night, an astronomer named Gall, say it Gah, and a student named D'Arrest, say it D'Arrest, who had the good luck of a freshly drawn star chart for exactly the right patch of sky, began comparing the chart to the heavens, star by star. Within about an hour, they found a point of light that wasn't on the chart. It sat roughly 1 degree from where the letter predicted, about the width of 2 full moons held side by side. They watched it the next night. It had moved. Planets do that. So Neptune entered the story not through a telescope, but through a pen. Someone said afterward that Le Verrier had discovered a planet with the point of his pen, and for once, the famous line is fair. Billions of kilometers of distance, closed by arithmetic. It remains, I'd argue, the single most polite thing mathematics has ever done. The finding set off a small, wonderful commotion. Newspapers across Europe carried the story of the planet found by arithmetic, and for a season, the quietest men in the world, the computers of orbits, were celebrities. It emerged afterward that an observer at Cambridge had actually logged the new planet twice that very summer, while searching on Adams's numbers, and never cross-checked his own notebook against itself. He'd written Neptune down, twice, and not noticed. I mention this without judgment. Every one of us has been that man about something, and most of us didn't have a planet riding on the filing. There was even a scuffle over the name. Le Verrier, flush with the wind, proposed the new world be called after the sea god, which stuck, and then allowed friends to float the suggestion that it be named after himself instead, which did not. The sky got Neptune. The mathematician got a ring named for him eventually, out at the planet itself, which I'd argue is the better monument. Fame fades, orbits don't. There's a gracious complication. Across the channel, an Englishman named John Couch Adams, still in his mid-20s, had been working the same problem independently and had reached his own predictions, which never quite got acted on in time. The two countries then spent a century arguing over credit, which is what countries do instead of hobbies. From tonight's distance, the argument matters less than the marvel. Two people, separately, listened to a wobble and heard a world in it. One more wrinkle, my favorite. 2.5 centuries earlier, in the winter of 1612, Galileo himself had pointed his little telescope at Jupiter and sketched, just beside it, a dim star that we now know was Neptune passing behind. He drew it twice. He even noted that it seemed to have shifted, and then the weather turned, or Jupiter pulled his attention home, and the moment passed. The greatest eye of his age held Neptune in it, twice, and let it go. The planet waited another 234 years without holding a grudge. Patience is not hard when you're made of wind. That's the story, and we've made good use of it, because look how far it's carried us. The letter was answered. The sky came out one planet larger, and the whole affair was settled before your great-grandmother's grandmother was tall enough to reach a bookshelf. And now the road runs out ahead of you, and there it is. After all that dark, a light. Neptune arrives out of the dark the way a lamp arrives at the end of a long hallway, small and sure of itself. It's the fourth widest world of the Sun's family, nearly 4 Earths across the middle, with the heft of 17 Earths tucked inside, and it wears the softest color in the solar system. Not the shouting royal blue of the old posters. Something gentler. The color has its own small story, and we finally get to see for ourselves. First, the light. You're now 30 times farther from the sun than your bed is, and sunlight out here runs about 900 times fainter than the daylight you know. That sounds like blackness. It isn't, quite. Noon on Neptune is a deep, silvery dusk, roughly the brightness of a room lit by a lamp 2 doors down the hall, still hundreds of times brighter than your full moonlight. You could just about read a book by Neptune's noon. You'd want the large print, and you'd want a blanket, but you could do it. The sun itself has shrunk to a point, no longer a disk at all, just the one star in the sky that refuses to be treated like the others, brilliant and small, like a keyhole into a bright room. Now, the color. For 35 years, every poster and textbook showed Neptune as a deep sapphire blue, and that came from the flyby pictures, which had been tuned hard to bring out faint clouds and bands, the way you'd turn up the contrast to read faded handwriting. Useful and beautiful, and not quite honest. In early 2024, researchers went back and rebalanced the old images against instruments that record color faithfully, and the truth came out gentler. Neptune is a pale greenish blue, a seafoam shade, nearly the twin of Uranus, only slightly bluer, thanks to a thinner veil of haze. The deep blue we all grew up with was mostly in the developing, not the planet. I find I like it better this way. The farthest planet turns out to be the color of sea glass, the color of things the ocean has already made peaceful. What makes even that color is a whiff of methane in the cold air, drinking up the red end of the sunlight and handing back the blues and greens. A planet-sized filter, working by subtraction, in light too shy to squint at. Victorian astronomers, peering through their eyepieces in the decades after the discovery, could see almost none of this. To them, Neptune was a dim, greenish dot that refused to become anything more, the faintest of the major worlds, teased out of the black on the best nights and lost again on the rest. Generations of careful people spent whole careers on that dot, measuring its creep along the star fields, working out its year, its heft, its family, all from a point of light smaller than a period on a printed page. Nearly everything else we know arrived in a single week in 1989. Some knowledge is a harvest, gathered all at once after a century and a half of plowing. One familiar note in all the strangeness: Neptune leans on its axis at about 28 degrees, almost exactly the tilt of Earth. So for all its alien weather, it runs honest seasons in the same style as yours, just 41 years to each. A world that agrees with your calendar about the principle and disagrees about the pace. You can even listen to this place, after a fashion. Neptune, like the other giants, hums with radio energy, waves wrung from its magnetic field, and when the flyby data is translated into sound, you get long, slow whistles and soft washes of static, like wind heard through a wall, like whale song slowed to the speed of weather. Nothing out here has ears, and strictly speaking, there's nothing to hear, only fields rippling in the dark. Translated for ours, though, the farthest planet sounds the way it looks, distant, unhurried, and blue. If you let yourself sink below the cloud tops in imagination, the dusk deepens by the kilometer. The last of the daylight gives out a few hundred kilometers down, and below that, the world runs on pressure and warmth of its own making. No morning ever scheduled, no morning ever missed. There are depths in Neptune where nothing has changed since before your country existed, and won't change tonight either. Some places don't need events, they just proceed. A note on the name, since we're properly here. The sea god suits it better than anyone in 1846 could have known. They named it for the ocean because of the color in their eyepieces, and then it turned out to be a world of storm and current and deep, an actual ocean of air running its own tides in the dark. Every so often, a guess lands so well it becomes a description. Time runs at odd sizes here. A day on Neptune lasts about 16 hours, brisk for a giant. A year lasts 165 of ours. Since the night GAHLA matched it against the star chart, Neptune has been around the Sun exactly once, completing its first observed lap in the summer of 2011. One birthday since we met it. Humanity, to be fair, was busy that week, and the planet didn't seem to mind. Each season out here lasts about 41 years, so whatever the weather is doing when you arrive, it's committed. If you could stand on the cloud tops, which you can't, nothing out here offers standing, you'd weigh about a tenth more than you weigh in bed. Of all the worlds we've passed tonight, this far blue one is the only one that would hold you down harder than home does. Even the scales out here are gently insistent that you stay put and rest. One more small news item from the modern instruments, because it's freshly checked. The thin upper air of Neptune has cooled noticeably since the flyby era, down by a large margin in a few decades, and the people who measure such things are still politely debating the reason. A world with moods, then, slow ones, the kind that take longer than a career and harm no one. So you've arrived, properly arrived, floating in a dusk the color of sea glass, above the last major world there is. The wind section is warming up below us, and it deserves its own room, because Neptune's weather is the strangest gentle fact of the whole night. For now, just float. The light out here has traveled 4 hours to reach you, and it isn't in a rush, and neither are you. Let yourself sink a little now, down toward the cloud decks, because the solar system has saved its wildest weather for its most soothing address, and that contradiction deserves a closer look. Neptune has the fastest winds of any planet we know. Near the equator, they run somewhere around 2,000 kilometers an hour, and some measurements have clocked them higher. Numbers like that slide right off the mind. So let me set it on the nightstand for you. A wind like that would carry you from London to New York in under 3 hours. It's 5 times stronger than the worst gust ever recorded anywhere on Earth. A passenger jet flying into it at full throttle would travel backward. Now the strange part. This is the world that receives the least sunlight of any planet, a fraction of a percent of yours, and by every tidy expectation, its air should barely stir. Sunlight is what powers weather on Earth, and out here, the sun is a rumor. Yet the winds of Neptune outrun everything sunward of it. The engine, it turns out, is the planet itself. Neptune gives off roughly 2.5 times more warmth than the sun sends it. Old heat from its own construction, still working its way up and out after 4.5 billion years, like a loaf still warm from an oven that was switched off before there was an earth to bake on. Weather powered from below, in the dark, by leftover warmth. There's something deeply restful about a storm that doesn't need the daylight. Why the winds run so fast out here is still an open question. And one of the candidate answers is my favorite kind. The kind that sounds like a bedtime paradox and might be true. With so little sunlight, Neptune's air may hold less of the small-scale churn and turbulence that acts as friction inside a planet's weather. Less roughness, less drag, so the great currents, once moving, just keep going, faster and smoother than anywhere else. The calm, in other words, may be the secret of the speed. It's one idea among several, argued over politely in journals. And if it holds, then the windiest place we know is windy precisely because it's so quiet. I'd like that to be true. We're allowed to root for a hypothesis, as long as we admit that's what we're doing. Everything we know about those winds, by the way, was learned by watching. There's no weather station down there. The flyby cameras and the telescopes since have simply tracked individual clouds, timing bright smudges as they lapped the planet, the way you might clock a jogger from a window. Somebody sat with the pictures and clocked the clouds. The fastest winds in the solar system were measured with, at heart, a stopwatch and patience. When our one visitor flew past in 1989, it found a storm the size of Earth, parked in the southern clouds, a deep indigo oval that got named the Great Dark Spot, on the reasonable assumption it would stick around the way Jupiter's red one has. 5 years later, when the Space Telescope checked in, the spot was gone. Vanished entirely, no forwarding address. Since then, new dark storms have surfaced elsewhere, drifted, faded, and been replaced. And telescopes back home have lately grown sharp enough to follow them from Earth. The seasons complicate the picture beautifully. With each season lasting 41 years, the flyby caught exactly one summer afternoon of one hemisphere, and everything since has been watched from home. The Space Telescope checking in year after year, like a distant relative keeping up with a slow correspondence. Cloud bands brighten and fade across decades. The South Pole warms through its long summer. Weather forecasting for Neptune is a job you'd hand your grandchildren, and somewhere in the files there are researchers doing exactly that, tending graphs their teachers started. Jupiter keeps one storm for centuries. Neptune redecorates. Whole Earth-sized systems come and go out here, the way weather fronts cross your county, and nobody stands beneath any of them, so no picnic has ever been ruined. The flyby also caught a small bright cloud scooting around the planet faster than everything near it, and the team, deep in a long night shift, named it Scooter. Astronomers name half the universe after Greek gods, and the other half at 2 in the morning. High over the blue decks, streaks of white methane ice drift like cirrus, high enough to cast shadows down onto the clouds below. 60 kilometers of soft gray falling on soft blue. The one confirmed skyline on Neptune is cloud on cloud. As for what's underneath, there is no underneath, not the kind you can stand on. The air thickens going down, from gas to something like slush, warmer and denser and stranger, an oceanish interior of water and ammonia and methane squeezed beyond all household categories, wrapped around a core hotter than the surface of the sun. Nobody has seen any of it. The instruments read the edges, and the interior stays a well-behaved inference. And then there's the rain the famous maybe rain, and I'll tell it to you exactly as carefully as it deserves. Deep inside worlds like this, the pressure may crush carbon out of methane and press it, molecule by molecule, into little diamonds, falling slowly through the dark toward the core, a hail of gemstones, thousands of kilometers below the clouds. Laboratory experiments on Earth, squeezing carbon-rich stuff with lasers, have made exactly that happen in miniature, so the idea has real legs under it. Whether it truly falls inside Neptune tonight, nobody can say. It's a maybe, offered for the pleasure of the thought. Diamond weather, in a place with no one to insure against it. If it's real, it has been raining wealth down there, unseen and unclaimed, since before the first fish. Some fortunes are safest exactly where they are. That's the weather report from the solar system's last address. Winds past 2,000, storms the size of your whole world dissolving like sugar, shadows of ice on decks of blue, and possibly, far below, the gentlest treasure in the universe, falling. None of it requires anything from you. The winds will circle the planet several times while you sleep, bothering no one, the way they've done since long before anyone was here to find them soothing. Only one traveler from Earth has ever been to this place, and its story is the kind you save for late in the evening. So here it is. Voyager 2 left Florida in August of 1977, 16 days before its twin, Voyager 1, which means the two of them launched in the wrong order and kept flying that way. It was built for a rare appointment. Once every 175 years or so, the outer planets happen to line up so that one spacecraft can be passed from world to world like a baton, each giant's gravity flinging it on to the next. Someone noticed the lineup was coming, so they built two small ships in a hurry, and one of them got tickets to everything. 12 years, 4 planets, Jupiter in 79, Saturn in 81, Uranus in 86, each flyby bending its path outward to the next, and finally, on the 25th of August, 1989, Neptune, the end of the itinerary. The navigators, feeling confident by then, threaded it just 5,000 kilometers over the planet's north pole, the closest this ship ever brushed past anything in its whole long life. 12 years of flying, and they trimmed the finale to the width of a small country. By then, Neptune's dusk was a real problem for photography. Deep twilight doing business as daytime, and the cameras had been designed for brighter neighborhoods. So engineers taught an old machine new manners, from 4 light hours away, longer exposures, and a slow, deliberate rotation of the whole spacecraft during each shot to cancel the blur, the way you'd steady a camera against a fence post at dusk. On the ground, radio dishes on 3 continents were ganged together to catch a signal that had spent just over 4 hours crawling home. The pictures came out clean, the last portraits in the album, of the last planet on the route, and its big pale moon, which is where we're headed next. The night of the flyby, the mission's home laboratory in California threw open its doors, and the celebration is part of the story now. Scientists, 2 decades into the project, watched the closest images arrive line by line, and at the party afterward, Chuck Berry himself, whose music was riding on the spacecraft, stood up with his guitar and played for the team. The machine his song was bolted to swept past Neptune that week and out of the planets forever. Somewhere beyond the heliopause tonight, Johnny B. Good is still outbound at 15 kilometers a second, which I file under sentences I feel lucky to get to say. Here's a detail I keep in a drawer and take out on good nights. The computers flying that mission hold less memory, all of them combined, than the key fob in your kitchen drawer. With that, it crossed the whole solar system and photographed everything on the way out, on the first try, with the whole neighborhood watching. The Neptune flyby was the end of the tour, and nothing like the end of the trip. Voyager 2 kept its speed and kept its heading outward, and in November of 2018, it did something no one had built it for. It crossed the boundary where the sun's wind finally gives way to the thin breath between stars, and became only the second human-made thing ever to sail in interstellar space, still calling home the entire time. It's out there right now. Tonight, as you lie still, it's a bit over 21 billion kilometers away and adding more than 1 million every day. Its voice takes most of a full day to reach us now. Ask it a question with your morning coffee, and the answer lands around tomorrow's bedtime. The engineers who talk with it plan conversations the way lighthouse keepers once planned winters. The listening is a job in itself, and I find the shape of it soothing. 3 great dish complexes are spaced almost evenly around Earth, in the California desert, in Spain, and in Australia, so that as the planet turns, one of them is always facing the right patch of sky. The ship never calls and finds nobody home. Antennas 70 meters across. Dishes you could nest a cathedral in. Lean back and hold their aim on a whisper fainter than a refrigerator bulb seen from another continent, and they catch it, night after night, and pass it on. Somewhere right now, in one of those 3 deserts, a shift is on duty for exactly this. Its heart is a small block of plutonium, warming it and feeding it power, and that heart cools a little every year, about 4 watts worth, so the team rations. Every year or so, another instrument is gently switched off and allowed to sleep, keeping the essentials warm, stretching what remains. This year, the count comes down again. Someday, sometime in the years ahead, the last instrument will close its eye, and the ship will stop calling home. That's real, and it deserves a plain sentence, and it's had one. Here's what follows the plain sentence. Nothing out there ends. When the radio falls silent, Voyager 2 simply becomes what it always was, a very good ship, sailing. There's no rust in interstellar space, no gravel to grind it down. It will outlast the pyramids by such a margin, the comparison is silly. It carries a golden record bolted to its side, a mixtape for strangers, with greetings in dozens of languages, a whale's song, a human heartbeat, and some Bach. And roughly 40,000 years from now, it will drift, still perfectly intact, past the neighborhood of another star. The heartbeat on that record belonged to someone having an ordinary day on a small blue world, during an otherwise ordinary summer. Whoever finds it will know exactly one of us, at rest. Right now, though, none of that has happened. Right now, the ship is fine, somewhere over your roof, A dish the size of a swimming pool is holding its aim at a point in the dark, and a whisper 21 billion kilometers old is arriving on schedule and being written down and answered. We are still on speaking terms with our farthest thing. Sleep well, knowing the call is connected. There's a moon here, and it isn't from here. And that's the whole story in one sentence. The long version is better. Triton turned up 17 days after Neptune itself. In October of 1846, with the ink on the Discovery barely dry, an Englishman named Lassell, say it Lassell, pointed his homemade telescope at the new planet and caught a speck of light circling it. Lassell had made his fortune brewing beer and had poured a healthy share of it into mirrors and mounts. It remains one of history's better arguments that beer, in moderation, advances science. The speck was a world 3/4 the width of our own moon, which makes it by far the largest thing Neptune owns. It also turned out to be circling the wrong way. Every other large moon in the solar system orbits in the same direction its planet spins, the way children run with a merry-go-round, because moon and planet formed together from the same swirl. Triton orbits against the spin, backwards, tilted, and serene about it, once around every 6 days. Moons that form at home don't do that. Moons that are caught do. The story that fits best, and it fits well, is that Triton didn't grow up here at all. It formed farther out, in the cold ring of small worlds beyond Neptune, and wandered close enough, long ago, for the big planet to reach out and keep it. An adopted moon. Neptune, the planet found by mathematics, has as its companion a world it acquired rather than raised. The adoption cost the neighborhood dearly, by the look of things, scattering or destroying whatever homegrown moons once lived in the middle distances. Families are complicated everywhere. Standing on Triton, if your boots were extraordinary, you'd be on some of the coldest ground ever measured in the solar system, about -235 degrees Celsius. The coldest night Earth has ever recorded, at a research station deep in the Antarctic winter, was warmer than that by nearly 150 degrees. Triton's frost makes our worst winter look like a mild inconvenience. The surface is nitrogen ice over water ice, dusted with frosts, with a broad polar cap that reads faintly pink in the photographs, and whole plains dimpled in a texture the official scientific literature, I am delighted to report, calls cantaloupe terrain. Everything humanity knows about this moon up close. Every crisp photograph, every temperature reading, every map comes from a visit that lasted, at its heart, a few hours, with the sharpest of it gathered in about 40 minutes of closest approach. One pass, one afternoon in 1989, and we've been living off the harvest for 4 decades. Triton keeps its own day simple too. It's locked to its orbit, the way our moon is locked to Earth. One face always toward Neptune, a week's lap where day, month, and year all shake hands. You'd expect a place like that to be finished, geologically done, frozen shut. Here's the lovely surprise the flyby brought home. Triton is alive, in the way ice can be alive. The cameras caught geysers going off, dark plumes rising 8 kilometers straight up before bending over in the thin wind, like smoke from cottage chimneys on a still morning. The going explanation is sunlight, feeble as it is out here, passing down through the clear nitrogen ice and warming dark material trapped beneath, until pockets of gas gather themselves and pop through, the whole sheet of ice working like the pane of a greenhouse. Even at the cold end of everything, the sun still manages a little mischief through a window. You can see where the plumes have been, too. The photographs show dozens of dark fans painted across the pink and white, streaks stretching downwind for 100 kilometers and more, each one the shadow record of an old eruption, soot laid gently on snow. Nothing erases them. They accumulate like entries in a guest book, a ledger of every time the ice exhaled, kept in a hand nobody taught it. Over all this hangs an atmosphere, technically, nitrogen, like yours, but tens of thousands of times thinner, enough for a breeze that could just about nudge a snowflake sideways and no more. And underneath, deep down, there may be an ocean, liquid water kept warm by the slow flex of tides, and the leftover heat of a difficult past. Maybe. Nobody knows yet, and nobody has to know tonight. If it's there, it has been dark and calm for 4 billion years, which sounds less like a horror and more like the best rested water in the universe. I owe you one shadow before we leave, and I'll keep it brief. Triton's backwards orbit isn't free. Circling against the spin means the tides drag on it, year by year, lowering it toward Neptune by inches. In a few billion years, the models say, it will come close enough to be pulled apart, and Neptune will wear its adopted moon as a magnificent ring. That's real. And it's sad in the way tides are sad. It's also billions of years off, further from tonight than tonight is from the first fish. This evening Triton is whole and bright and quietly snowing on itself, and that's the Triton you get to fall asleep over. So the geysers lean downwind, the pink frost settles where it settles, and the adopted moon circles its enormous parent the wrong way round, entirely at home. Some arrangements aren't traditional. They hold anyway. Pull back now, further and further, until moon and planet shrink together into the dusk, because before we turn for home, you should see the whole household at once. Neptune keeps 16 known moons, at the latest careful count, and the naming out here has stayed beautifully on theme. The planet got the god of the sea, so the moons get the sea's own retinue, nymphs and sea creatures and old tide spirits, a whole mythology of water assigned to the driest, coldest real estate there is. Somebody has kept that promise for nearly 2 centuries of discoveries, and I hope they never stop. Triton is the giant among them. The rest are a small crowd of worthies, and their names alone are a lullaby. Close in, small and quick, run Naiad, Thalassa, Despina, Galatea, and Larissa, skimming the cloud tops, several of them shepherding the rings the way sheepdogs manage a flock. Then Proteus, a dark lump nearly the size of a proper world, right at the edge of being big enough for gravity to press it round, and declining to be pressed. Farther out swings Nereid, on one of the most stretched orbits any moon anywhere possesses, sweeping close to Neptune and then 7 times farther away again, every single lap, a porch swing of a moon. It was found in 1949 by Gerard Kuiper, the same astronomer whose name now labels the whole icy country past Neptune, a man who kept extending the map's edge and then having the edge named after him. There's Hippocamp, a tiny thing spotted in 2013 in old space telescope pictures, most likely a chip knocked off Proteus in some ancient collision, a moon souvenir of a bad day. And the 2 newest members were only announced in 2024, caught by astronomers stacking long exposures on mountaintop telescopes back home. Those 2 are still wearing license plate names, letters and numbers, waiting on the naming committee, and somewhere that committee is enjoying itself immensely. 16 companions, 1 adopted giant among them, all turning in the dim. The rings are here too, and they're a kindness of history. Neptune's 5 faint main rings carry 5 names from its discovery story: Leverrier, Gall, Lassell, Arago, and Adams. Not everyone involved received one, but the ring system preserves several parts of the story more gracefully than the newspapers did. The outermost ring holds the strangest detail in the whole system. Its dust isn't spread evenly. It gathers in long, bright clumps, arcs that shouldn't survive but do, herded by the gravity of one of those small shepherd moons. Astronomers named the arcs Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité, and Courage. Liberty, equality, brotherhood, and courage, drifting in a slow curve around the farthest planet, which I believe is the most French thing that has ever happened this far from France. The arcs shift and thin as decades pass, and the people who watch such things keep gentle notes. Even the planet's compass is eccentric. Neptune's magnetic field leans some 47 degrees off its spin and rises from a point well off center besides, so its auroras bloom not at the poles where yours live, but across odd middle latitudes. Just last year, the newest space telescope caught those auroras glowing for the first time, a soft cyan shimmer in the infrared dusk, and found the upper air cooler than the flyby had left it. The farthest weather report keeps updating, slowly of course. Everything out here happens slowly, which is the whole reason we came. Beyond this system, out past the last arc of Courage, the sun's estate thins into the cold ring country that Triton originally came from. Millions of small icy worlds, too dim and too polite to interrupt anything. Pluto keeps its orbit out there, by the way, demoted to dwarf planet some years back. By a committee vote I have made my peace with, more or less, on most evenings. Pluto and Triton are almost certainly kin. 2 children of the same cold nursery, one adopted by a giant, one left to keep its own counsel. Both are doing fine. History will record that I was gracious about it. Some astronomers suspect one more large world may hide far beyond all this, betrayed by faint patterns in the orbits of the small icy things. The same trick of arithmetic that found Neptune, run again at a grander scale. It hasn't been found. It may not exist. If it's out there, it has waited this long in the dark without complaint, and it can certainly wait out your night's sleep. The solar system keeps one guest room made up, just in case. Farther still, and the sun's breath itself gives out, the wind of particles it exhales finally piling up against the thin gas between the stars. A boundary crossed by only 2 working machines so far, both still whispering as they went. Past that, the long quiet, all the way to the next star, 4.25 light years of nothing needing your attention. Other machines have come through this district since. A small, fast probe crossed Neptune's orbit some years back on its way to Pluto, hurrying as much as anything out here ever hurries, and gave the little demoted world its first and only portrait session. The pictures showed glaciers of nitrogen and a bright plane shaped, I'm pleased to report, like a heart. Pluto sat for its photograph wearing a heart the size of a country, which I choose to read as a complete lack of hard feelings. The probe swept on into the deeper dark, still going after a flyby of one more small world, a reddish snowman of a rock out in the Kuiper country, with the lights of that country all around it. Even out past the last planet, we've managed to send a little curiosity ahead of us. And that's the true edge of tonight's map. Not a wall, not a cliff, just the sun's influence, thinning by degrees until the space between stars takes over the housekeeping, the way surf gives out into open sea. The dark past the last arc isn't empty, strictly. It's full of distance, patiently arranged, and nothing in it is due for centuries. One last domestic note, for some other evening entirely. On a clear night, with decent binoculars, a star chart, and patience, you can find Neptune from your own backyard. It looks like a small, steady speck, faintly green, refusing to twinkle. The light hitting your binoculars will have left the planet 4 hours earlier. Dusk light with a long commute. Thousands of amateur astronomers do exactly this every year, and every one of them, finding it, has thought some version of the same thing. There you are. That's the whole household then. 16 moons, 5 rings named for the finders, 4 ideals drifting in an arc, 1 backwards giant of an adopted sun, and the last lit window of the sun's house, glowing sea glass green at the end of the lane. Nothing out here needs us. It was doing all of this before we noticed, and it will be doing it tomorrow night, exactly as gently, whether or not anyone is looking. It's time to turn for home, and the road home is instant. The way back takes no effort at all, and tonight it can be done lying perfectly still. Look at everything you passed. You drove your car straight up and reached space inside an hour. You watched thunderstorms flicker like fireflies packed in cotton, and saw your whole planet fit inside a 1/10 of a pixel with room to spare. You passed footprints resting in gray dust, crisp as the day they were pressed. A blue evening came down over a rusted world. The asteroid belt kept its million-kilometer courtesies. Jupiter held the door, with a storm pinned to its lapel, and 4 lanterns swung by in a line, one of them keeping a sealed sea. Saturn turned a sheet of ice thinner than a house and wider than 20 Earths. Orange Titan promised rain like falling marbles, and a planet that was nearly named George rolled by sideways, unbothered. Then a letter crossed Europe. A telescope in Berlin tipped up on the right September night, and the sky came out 1 planet larger. You floated in a noon 900 times fainter than yours, and found you could still read by it. Winds outran every jet ever built, over clouds that may be raining diamonds on nobody. An old ship whispered home from 21 billion kilometers out, right on schedule. Geysers leaned like chimney smoke over pink frost. A small, demoted world sat for its portrait wearing a heart, and 4 ideals drifted in an arc around the farthest lamp the sun keeps lit. All that distance, and here's the thing I hope you carry into sleep. The universe is mostly made of distance, and distance, seen kindly, is just another word for peace. Now you're back, the whole way home, compressed into a breath, and nothing out there missed you, because nothing out there was counting. Your room is exactly where you left it. Feel how well it fits. Of every place we visited tonight, every ringed and roaring and sea glass world, this is the only one with a pillow in it, and the pillow is already under your head. You were, the entire time, in the softest spot of the visible universe. Thank you for coming along tonight. It's a long way to Neptune, and it's better with company. Wherever you are, whatever your window looks out on, some of the light around your room tonight has been traveling for a very long time to end up somewhere this comfortable. It could not have picked better. Rest easy now. The winds out there will circle without you. The geysers will lean. The old ship will keep whispering. And every last bit of it is a long way off and in no hurry whatsoever. The only thing left to do tonight is the thing you're already doing. Sleep now. Good night.